Welcome to the deep dive. Today, our mission is really zeroing in on a core piece of the clean energy puzzle,
Yeah.
that reliable 247 power.
Right.
We talk a lot about solar and wind, and they're fantastic, but they have that built-in problem, right? Intermittency. They only work when the conditions are just right.
Exactly. And if you want a truly decarbonized grid, you absolutely need power sources that are clean and run constantly. No ifs, ands, or buts.
That's the big challenge, isn't it? How do you actually back up all this amazing but intermittent renewable infrastructure?
It is. And that brings us neatly to the two main contenders, grabbing headlines and investment in that clean baseload space.
Okay, so on one side, we've got the big dream, the holy grail. Some call it fusion, the promise of almost limitless clean
It's
energy.
the ultimate prize potential.
And then maybe more grounded, more near term. There's advanced fission. We're mostly talking small modular reactors here, SMRs.
Yeah, the next generation designs, Gen IV stuff, they're specifically engineered to tackle the big headaches of old nuclear cost, safety, waste. The works.
So our mission today is to dig into the sources, sort of separate the genuine potential from maybe the overly optimistic hype for both.
And for you listening, the real question isn't just if these technologies will work. It's more about how big a role they'll play, how soon they can actually scale up.
And, crucially, under what conditions they can really deliver on energy security and help us hit those tough climate deadlines.
Precisely.
Okay, let's kick off with the fundamental need. Why is this baseload power so critical? I mean, battery tech is getting better all the time, isn't it?
It is, but batteries handle grid balancing and shorter durations. Baseload is about that constant minimum power demand, hour after hour, day after day. Think critical infrastructure.
Like hospitals, server farms.
Exactly. Hospitals, big industrial plants, those massive data centers underpinning our digital world. These things simply cannot afford to go dark if the wind drops or the sun goes down.
And that's where the limits of solar and wind become really clear. They're intermittent, yes, but also variable. You need backups for the backup sometimes.
You do. And looking at the reliability numbers, the capacity factors makes it stark. Your traditional nuclear plant, it runs about 90% of the time, just chugging along.
90%, okay.
Compare that to solar, maybe 25% on average, even in good spots. Wind, perhaps 35% to 45%. It's a massive gap.
So advanced nuclear aims to fill that 247 need with clean, firm power, basically stabilizing a grid that's increasingly renewable heavy.
That's the goal. And then there's the whole energy security angle, which has become, very prominent lately.
Yeah, can't ignore the geopolitics.
Definitely not. Recent world events really hammered home how vulnerable countries are if they rely heavily on imported fossil fuels, like oil or natural gas. Prices spike, supplies get disrupted.
Nuclear offers a way out of that.
It offers significant energy sovereignty, yeah. Nuclear fuel lasts for years inside a reactor, and you can diversify where you source the raw uranium or fuel components from. It provides a buffer against that global volatility.
Okay, but hold on. Some of these advanced reactors need specialized fuels, like HALEU, high-assay, low-enriched uranium. Doesn't that just swap dependency on, say, Russian gas for dependency on a handful of specialized fuel suppliers?
That's a really sharp point, and it's a real concern. You're potentially trading price risk for supply chain risk. But the key difference is the energy density, meaning you need vastly smaller quantities of nuclear fuel compared to oil or gas. So yes, securing that specialized fuel supply chain is critical, but the logistics are just fundamentally less complex than managing daily tanker shipments or massive pipelines.
Right, the sheer volume is different.
And of course, fusion, if it works,
Yeah.
its main fuel, deuterium, is readily available in seawater. That's the ultimate energy independence, theoretically.
Okay, let's pivot to that ultimate dream then, fusion. Give us the quick EMC-a-watt version. How are we trying to build the star in a machine?
Well, fundamentally, fusion is the reverse of current nuclear fission. Instead of splitting heavy atoms like uranium.
You're smashing light ones together.
Exactly. You're forcing two light atomic nuclei, usually isotopes of hydrogen called deuterium and tritium, to fuse together, forming a heavier nucleus, like helium. And in that process, a huge amount of energy is released. It's the same reaction that powers the sun.
But the physics makes that incredibly hard, right? Don't those nuclei want to repel each other?
They absolutely do. They're both positively charged, so they repel electrostatically. That's the Coulomb barrier. To overcome it, you need, Extreme
Oh,
conditions.
extreme.
You have to confine the fuel, the plasma, very densely, and heat it to temperatures over 100 million degrees Celsius.
100 million. That's hotter than the sun's core, isn't it?
It is significantly hotter. It's pretty mind-boggling that
Yeah.
we're trying to contain something that hot inside a physical machine on Earth.
Okay, so if the goal is to get more energy out than you put in to create those conditions, how do we track progress?
The main metric is the Q factor. Simply put, it's the ratio of the fusion power produced divided by the external power needed to heat and sustain the plasma.
So Q greater than 1 means you've got net energy gain.
Correct. Q1 is scientific break-even. But for a power plant to actually be practical and economic, you need a Q significantly higher, maybe around 10 or more.
And we've seen some big news on this front recently, haven't we?
Yeah.
Milestones being hit.
We have. Historically, the JG2 tokamak in the UK was crucial. Back in 1997, it produced 16 megawatts of fusion power for a short burst. That was a landmark, even though the Q was only about 0.67.
Still less than 1, but proof of concept.
Right. More recently, the National Ignition Facility, NEMF, in the U.S., using a different approach called inertial confinement with lasers, actually achieved momentary ignition Q greater than 1 in single pulses in 2022 and 2023. That was a huge scientific breakthrough.
And then there's the giant international project, ITER.
Ah, yes, ITER in France. It's this massive multi-billion-dollar tokamak and international collaboration aiming for Q10. But it's faced significant delays and cost overruns. First plasma is now expected sometime in the mid-2030s.
Mid-2030s for first plasma, not even power generation yet. Okay, this brings us to that old joke. Fusion is 30 years away and always will be.
Laugh slightly. Yeah, that one's been around a while.
It sounds like the basic physics is sort of understood, but the engineering to make it work continuously, that's the real monster.
I think that's fair to say now. The engineering challenges are immense, possibly even harder than the plasma physics at this point. There are like 3 really big ones.
Okay.
First, tritium supply. Tritium, one of the key fuels, is rare, it's radioactive, and it decays relatively quickly. Fusion reactors will need to breed their own tritium.
Breed it? How?
By having neutrons from the fusion reaction hit lithium blankets surrounding the plasma chamber. This converts lithium into tritium and helium. The reactor has to produce more tritium than it consumes to be self-sustaining. That's called closing the fuel cycle, and we haven't demonstrated we can do that efficiently at scale yet.
Right. If you can't make enough fuel as you go, the whole thing grinds to a halt. What's next?
Second, and this is maybe the toughest one, materials durability. Think about the inside wall of that reactor. It's getting blasted constantly by intense heat, high-energy neutrons.
Sounds brutal.
It is. These conditions cause materials to swell, crack, become brittle, activated. We need materials that can withstand that environment for years, ideally decades, without failing. And frankly, we don't have proven materials that can do that yet. It's a massive, unresolved challenge.
Okay, that sounds like a showstopper if it can't be solved. And the third big hurdle.
Plasma control. Keeping that incredibly hot, turbulent plasma stable and confined for long periods, not just milliseconds or seconds, but continuously, is extraordinarily difficult. Plasma can develop instabilities, edge localized modes. It's like trying to hold smoke in your hands.
So summing up fusion, incredible long-term potential, major scientific progress, but facing really fundamental engineering roadblocks related to fuel breeding, materials, and control. Realistically, grid deployment seems, well, maybe 2040s, more likely 2050s.
That seems like a reasonable time frame, yes.
Yeah.
It's a long-term strategic bet. High risk, incredibly high reward.
Which means if we need serious decarbonization much sooner, like for 2050 climate goals, we need something else deployable in the nearer term. That leads us back to advanced fission and SMRs.
Exactly. This is where the conversation shifts to something potentially much closer to reality. SMRs, small modular reactors, are just a different philosophy from the giant bespoke nuclear plants of the past.
How so?
Instead of these 1,000-megawatt plus behemoths, SMRs are smaller, typically in the 50 to 300 megawatt electric range. And the key idea is factory production.
Like building cars on an assembly line instead of custom building a mansion.
That's a great analogy. They're designed to be manufactured in a factory as modules, shipped to a site, and assembled. This standardization is meant to drive down costs and speed up construction.
And safety is a huge part of the pitch too, right? Addressing the public perception issues from older plants.
Absolutely central. The big innovation here is passive safety. Many Jan Barvide designs rely on fundamental physics, things like gravity, natural convection of cooling fluids, heat radiation to automatically shut down and remove decay heat in an emergency.
So even if all external power is lost, like at Fukushima, the reactor basically takes care of itself.
That's the design principle. No need for active pumps, external power, or even immediate operator intervention in many accident scenarios. It dramatically reduces the risk profile.
That's compelling. And the financial side, you mentioned cost. Traditional nuclear projects are notorious for budget blowouts.
And that's precisely what SMRs aim to fix. A single large plant might cost upwards of $10 billion, maybe much more. That's a huge financial risk for any utility or government.
Very few entities can gamble that much.
Right. SMRs, being smaller, have a much lower upfront capital cost per unit, maybe, say, $1.8 billion for a Rolls-Royce SMR once they get to the nth-of-a-kind unit. It makes financing much more manageable and less risky.
That lower cost relies heavily on that factory production model actually working, though, doesn't it? The nth-of-a-kind part.
It absolutely does. The economic case hinges on achieving economies of scale through high-volume manufacturing. Replication is key.
We also hear a lot about different coolants and fuels, molten salt reactors, lead-cooled fast reactors using thorium.
Yeah.
What's the significance there?
That's about optimizing performance and, crucially, tackling the waste issue. These advanced designs often use coolants that can operate at higher temperatures and lower pressures, improving efficiency and safety. And fuels like thorium or recycling plutonium in MOX fuel aim to drastically reduce the amount and longevity of high-level radioactive waste.
Some designs, the fast reactors, can even burn existing nuclear waste.
That's one of the major goals, yes. Fast reactors can potentially use spent fuel from older reactors as fuel, transmuting the long-lived nasty stuff into shorter-lived isotopes. It's about closing the fuel cycle and potentially reducing the waste burden.
Okay, so fusion has its materials challenged with extreme heat and neutrons. What's the equivalent deep engineering or maybe logistical bottleneck for SMRs getting to market at scale?
I'd say it's a manufacturing standardization barrier combined with the regulatory process. Fusion needs materials for million-degree plasma. SMRs need identical components approved and built consistently across potentially dozens of factories and regulatory systems worldwide.
So if every country demands slightly different tweaks to the design or materials.
You lose the whole point of factory mass production. The costs stay high. You need a substantial, predictable global order book to justify building the factories and driving the unit cost down to that target range, maybe $60 to $90 per megawatt hour, where it's truly competitive.
So the first-of-a-kind FOACAC costs are a major hurdle to overcome before you get those economies of scale.
Exactly. Someone has to pay for those expensive initial units to get the production line rolling.
But the technology itself seems more mature. We have designs like Nuscale's VOAGR already certified by the NRC in the U.S. The ADVANCE Act was just passed in the U.S. to speed things up.
The political momentum is definitely there in several countries, like the U.S., UK, Canada, France. And certification is a huge step. But translating that into actual deployed reactors generating power by the late 2020s or early 2030s still requires navigating complex supply chains, workforce training, and yes, that regulatory licensing for specific sites and potentially novel fuel types.
It's bureaucracy and logistics as much as engineering at this point.
A large part of it, yes. And SMRs aren't operating in a vacuum. They face intense competition from renewables. Solar and wind costs keep falling. Battery storage is improving rapidly. Renewables often win on deployment speed right now.
So SMRs really need to prove they can deliver on cost and speed to carve out a significant market share.
They absolutely do. They need to get through that initial high-cost phase, the valley of death, quickly.
Okay, bringing it all together. How do these two nuclear pathways, fusion and advanced fission, fit with renewables? Is it one or the other, or do they work together?
Oh, it's definitely a synergy. It has to be. You get risk diversification by having a mix. If you have a year with low wind or less sun, or if battery costs don't fall as fast as hoped, firm nuclear capacity is invaluable.
And nuclear provides grid services that renewables struggle with.
Yes, crucial services. Things like inertia, the physical spinning mass that helps stabilize grid frequency, which inverter-based resources like solar and wind don't inherently provide, and just that unwavering firm capacity available regardless of the weather.
You also mentioned earlier the heat aspect. That seems like a unique advantage for nuclear.
It's potentially huge for deep decarbonization. Both advanced fission and fusion generate very high temperature heat, much hotter than needed just for electricity.
And that heat can be used directly for industry.
Precisely. For processes that are really hard to electrify, Think about making steel, cement, ammonia for fertilizers, or large-scale hydrogen production through electrolysis or thermochemical cycles, even desalination. These require immense heat, and nuclear can potentially provide it cleanly. Renewables are great for powering homes and EVs, but industrial heat is a different beast.
So nuclear could decarbonize sectors beyond just the electricity grid.
That's a major part of the long-term value proposition, yes.
Okay, so let's try to wrap this up. The key takeaway seems to be advanced fission, primarily SMRs, looks like the more near-term, pragmatic tool. It offers firm, clean power and potentially that high-temperature industrial heat. Deployment target, late 2020s, scaling through the 2030s if they overcome cost and regulatory hurdles.
That sounds right. It's the strategic tool we have that's closest to being ready for scale.
A fusion. It's the longer-term, transformative bet. Huge potential, huge challenges still, especially on the engineering side. Realistically, grid contribution is likely decades away. Maybe 2040s pilot plants, 2050s commercial rollout, if all goes well.
High risk, high reward moonshot, essentially. But one we probably need to keep pursuing.
And both seem absolutely vital if we're serious about getting to net zero emissions globally.
I think that's the consensus emerging. You need the renewables, you likely need the storage, and you probably need clean, firm power like advanced nuclear to make it all work reliably and affordably.
So if SMRs can successfully navigate that tricky path, scale up factory production, get costs down, gain broad public and regulatory acceptance, they could shift from being a sort of expensive niche option to a really core part of energy independence and climate strategy.
That's the potential, yes.
But, and this is the crucial question maybe for you, the listener, to ponder. Given how fast renewables are developing and deploying, can nuclear, specifically SMRs, actually get through that valley of death, that gap between the first prototypes and genuinely competitive, mass-produced units, fast enough to make a major contribution to hitting those critical 2050 climate targets? The clock is ticking.
It really is. And just one final thought to leave you with. Consider the implications of those advanced fuel cycles and fast reactors we touched on. The push towards using fuels like thorium or designing reactors that can actually consume existing nuclear waste.
Yeah.
It suggests a future where nuclear power systems might not just be about generating clean energy moving forward, but could also play a role in actively cleaning up the environmental legacy of the past century of nuclear activity. That's quite a paradigm shift, isn't it? Fission not just as an energy source, but potentially as part of a remediation solution too.